My name is Cole. I'm an EOD technician here on base for about another 4 weeks and we're PCS and getting out of here. I get to be the lucky one to go first this morning, the guinea pig. My most recent deployment, I found myself over in Afghanistan. I was in Ghazni province, and I was in the middle of a supply route called Route the Rebel. I was on my knees in the middle of the road, and I was working on an explosive device that was designed to destroy armored vehicles. As much as I love our job and as much of an adrenaline rush as that is, at that moment in time, all I could really think about was my wife and son. And I started to think about if it was to detonate with me right there on it, how I would never know anything ever happened. But my family would be left with a mess after that. And I kind of started to question my motivations and question why I was there, what I was doing, and why I even wanted to do it. So how I got to that point is my story starts in Georgia. I was born and raised in Georgia. I am not a Georgia Bulldogs fan, before anybody jumps to conclusions. I'm a Georgia Tech fan. Just get that out over first and foremost. But I started out in Georgia, going to join the Army. My cousin, who was in the Army, said, don't join the Army, join the Air Force. He goes, unless you want to get shot at and blown up, then in the Army. So I went to the Air Force. Ended up getting EOD. And left from there, went to training, did a year at EOD school, and went to Shaw Air Force Base, my first duty station. I got to Shaw, and like any other EOD airman fresh out of EOD school, I wanted to deploy. I wanted to do the job that I've been trained to do for so long. I heard all the guys there at the shop telling their war stories, and I wanted mine. I wanted to go to Iraq, go to Afghanistan, I wanted to get shot at, mess with IEDs, or get a big chest full of medals, and go back to Georgia to a big hero's welcome, and that's how it was going to be. That's kind of what I envisioned. Well, my first supervisor was going to be, at that time, a Staff Sergeant, Adam Burnett. Adam was deployed when I got to Shaw, so like any good airman, without guidance, I got away with doing as little work as possible. I goofed off a lot, cracked jokes a lot, played a lot of ping pong, didn't want to train, just kind of trying to get by to the minimum. And a couple of guys at the shop would tell me, Adam's not going to put up with that, Adam's not going to get okay with that, Adam's going to get you out of this, out of that. I started to see Adam as kind of this hardcore kind of guy, and I was like, I don't think I'm going to like Adam too much. So Adam got back from deployment, and his first shop, I went up to him, so I was going to break the ice, and show him that I wasn't scared of him, or whatever was going through my head at that time. So I stuck my hand out, I was like, my name's Aaron Pasley, I'm the new airman here. And sitting there with my hand stuck out, and he looked at my hand and looked at me and goes, okay, and walked off. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is going to be tough. He's a stick in the mud. So now I'm in the position I'm in today. I kind of understand why he's doing it. It's honestly kind of funny. He was trying to get my plays, which I needed. But I began to respect Adam a lot. Adam was a phenomenal EOD technician. He was an encyclopedia of EOD information almost. He would not only tell you what team came from, he would tell you what paragraph it came from. He had fought for the mission, he loved the job, he loved all of us, and one of the guys that made people work for him. So Adam would end up getting PCS to Korea and on to Aviano, and I would get orders to go to Iraq for deployment. So I left from there, went to Iraq, typical cut and dry youth deployment, 100-something missions outside the wire, dozens of IEDs, a couple of attacks on the convoy, route clearance, all that fun stuff. Nothing too out of the ordinary. I came back, and I was pretty confident with what I had done. Some would probably say cocky. And it was time for that next notch at my belt. Like, Iraq's done, let's go to Afghanistan. I want to do that. About 6 months later, I would get my wish, get a tasking for Afghanistan, and a few months after that, I would be out the door. At my pre-deployment training, I met a senior airman, Michael Burris. Mikey was also from Georgia. Mikey was a Georgia Bulldogs fan, and I would tell Mikey how much the Georgia Bulldogs sucked, And for whatever reason, he didn't believe me. He actually thought that Georgia Tech sucked, which was wrong. And we would continue to go back and forth about that. Mikey was a fun guy to be around. He was cocky, but he was like the type of cocky that made you like him. He had something funny to say about every situation, and really good dude. He left pre-deployment training early. His wife was pregnant with his first kid, so he left to be there for the birth. And I think it was 2 or 3 days after she was born, he met back up with folks in Virginia, and we left to go to Afghanistan. We went our separate ways out to our respective operating locations as the EOD guys do, and just kind of kept in contact with them through Facebook. I got sent out to the Tangi Valley. You can see the little square of HESCOs was the entirety of our base there. Tangi Valley was not fun at all. Lots of IEDs, lots of RPGs, mortars, firefights, you name it. Poor living conditions. Kind of got used to seeing Army guys get hurt and killed. Not a lot of fun. While we were out there, an Army team, they were transitioning to a different FOB, and they ended up getting stuck out in the Tangi Valley. The team was led by a Staff Sergeant Tom Rabjohn. He's the larger guy on the left. Tom was Arizona Guardsman. Excuse me. He had started out in the Marines, got out of the Marines, started a family, went back into the National Guard, went through the EOD program. Pretty interesting dude, as everybody who's been deployed knows. Deployed time kind of moves a little slower than normal time, so a few weeks with somebody and you kind of know them as if you would have been with somebody for like a year back in the States. So, during this time I got to know Tom. Very interesting fellow. He was a cop. We talked guns. He enjoyed Jeeps. Watched movies together. And Tom and his team member John stayed with us in our tent. And Tom had a pair of Christmas candy cane boxers that he wore. And out in the Tangi Valley, we didn't have showers or running water. You'd go a long time without a shower. So you'd end up wearing the same pair of underwear for days on end. So Tom would take his pants off to go to bed, and we'd all make fun of him about how goofy his Christmas candy cane underwear was. And just kind of the little bantering relationship we had. So Tom moved on, finally got his ride up to FOB Airborne to operate out of there. And a few weeks later, our team got told that we were going to move up to FOB Airborne as well to do the RIP with the guys that were coming in to replace us. So the plan was we would go up to FOB Airborne and we would replace Tom's team, because Tom was going on his mid-tour leave, and then he was going to Kuwait after that. He'd be finished with Afghanistan. So we get up to Airborne. We'd been having some mechanical issues with our truck, so the agreement was that Tom would run operations for us for a few days while we got our truck situated, and then we would take over for him on the 4th of October, because he was leaving on the 5th. On the 3rd of October, we were sitting around in our tent watching movies and goofing off, and he got a call. There's an IED about 5 clicks off base, and he was going to go respond. So we went out with him, walked into his truck, told him to be safe and everything, hey, go get this one over with, then you can go home to your family. And Tom left. About an hour or so later, we hear a detonation, and we're like, cool, Tom's finished. Finally, we can start our movie back and do whatever. So we kind of went back to what we were doing. Well, a few minutes after that, one of our EOD guys came running down from the battalion talk and told us that our team needed to spin up and get ready to go respawn because Tom had been killed and his team member John had been wounded. So on the 3rd of October, 2009, there in Afghanistan, Tom ended up leaving his family behind. And this feeling of dread came over me, like I'd never wanted to do a post-blast on a EOD guy that I knew. Never wanted to do a post-blast on anybody, but especially someone you know. But it had to be done, so we got in our truck and we left. Because of the work that Tom had done thus far on the IED, not all of it had gone off. So first thing we had to do was take care of the explosive hazards that were out on scene, then do an analysis to try to figure out what happened, and then we started remains recovery. And without getting into too much detail, there wasn't a lot left, but we were canvassing the area trying to find what we could. And during that canvas, we ran across about a hand-sized fragment of Christmas candy cane boxer material laying on the ground. And that point right there, I pretty much lost it. And I remember one of the Army MPs telling me, "Hey man, you don't have to be out here doing this." And I told him, I said, "Yeah, I do. I'm not going to be in the truck like a coward while somebody else is out here picking up my friend." So we did what we did and finished up. Went back to the fob, rehashed the event for the next few days, and the head shed came down, took his belongings, and left, and it was like nothing ever happened. We were running ops kind of how we were before. Well, a couple weeks after that, our replacement showed up, and we did our RIP and went home. There was no deployment transition center or anything like that at the time. So I went from that experience to my living room trying to figure out how to fit back in. From my experiences out in the Tangian and everything from Tom, I was having the nightmares, I wasn't sleeping, I was hyper-vigilant, I was jumpy, I was angry, I was mad. Although I was able to kind of separate that from where I didn't directly mistreat my family and my wife, she did have to sit there and kind of watch me self-destruct almost. And unfortunately I had her, because a lesser woman would have probably left me and I probably would have deserved it. But I was struggling. And eventually one day I was on the internet and I Googled Tom's name, and a YouTube video came up of his ramp ceremony out in Arizona. And it was his National Guard unit, his police unit, the Luke Air Force Base UD shop, which ironically enough is where I'm going from here. And it was a beautiful ceremony on video of the flag draped coffin, the music and everything, and I watched it and I honestly just broke down and started crying, and I watched it again and watched it again. And I watched it on loop several times, and I kind of had my little moment of self-pity and crying and everything, and then after that I felt great. I felt like a burden had been lifted, and it was almost like it was the closure that I never got from Tom's incident. And things kind of started going up at that point. Well, in January of 2010, I got recalled back to the EOD shop there at Shaw, and I was told that my best friend, Josh Labat, and my supervisor, now Tech Sergeant Adam Gannett, they were on a mission together in Afghanistan and had been blown up. All I knew is that Josh was wounded. I didn't know how bad. Nobody in the shop knew how bad yet. For an EOD guy, wounded can be TBI or it can be triple amputation. You never know. I just knew he was hurt. Tech Sergeant Adam Gannett had been killed. That propelled me into another realm of anguish because I was still kind of dealing with the Tom stuff. And I had ended up kind of idolizing Adam and trying to mimic my career kind of in the way that he had mentored me. And it's almost like I lost my identity when I knew that he was gone. So I went up to North Carolina to his funeral and came back and kind of started that cycle again of not really knowing what I was doing. But what I did know is that my motivations up until that point had been incredibly shallow. The only reason that I was in the job was for me. And I had these friends that were dying and losing their life, and here I was concerned about what kind of experience I would get, and you know, everything that I was doing was for me. But I didn't know how to handle that. So I would actually end up PCSing here and going TDY to Newark, New Jersey. And while I was in New Jersey, I was talking on Facebook to Michael Burris again. He was back in Afghanistan, and Georgia and Georgia Tech were to be playing a game, a big rivalry game that we have every year. So I was telling him how bad they were going to get beat, and he was telling me what a crappy college Georgia Tech was, and we were going back and forth to each other. And we wrapped up that conversation. I told him to be safe, get back and everything. I was going to bed, and we kind of parted our little Facebook conversation then. I got up the next morning and checked Facebook, like I always do, and I saw people posting, like, "We're going to miss you, Mikey, Mikey this, Mikey that," and I already knew what had happened, but I started reaching out to my friends, and I was like, "Hey, what's going on with Mikey? What's the deal?" And the next call that Mikey went on after we talked, he was killed by an IED. And from that point on, I kind of just threw myself completely into the EOD job. I ate EOD, I slept it, I breathed it. I went into work early, I stayed late. Because I was bound and determined, because I was going to do everything that I could for these guys. Which wasn't really the right answer, because I ended up inadvertently kind of sacrificing time with my family and my wife. But that's kind of how I handled it at that time. So I ended up deploying out of here, going back to Afghanistan, and found myself in the position that I mentioned earlier. And that deployment would actually ultimately lead to my team. We got struck by an IED. Fortunately, it wasn't bad. There's definitely been way worse. We walked away. But it did get me thinking, why am I here? Why am I willing to sacrifice all this stuff? And I kind of went through a period of soul searching and talking to people. And I think I've got it figured out. It's still a work in progress. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I'm here to tell you what motivates me up until this point. And now what motivates me is my family. I hope that because of what I'm doing now, one day my son won't have to leave and go to some miserable country and get shot at and blown up. One day when I'm old, which is a really long ways away, by the way, he will give me some grandkids, like my wife and I gave our parents. Second, my wife supports me, stands by me. She loves what I do as much as I love what I do, and I'm pretty fortunate to have that. So they're my number one motivation. Number two is Tom. Tom was my first experience actually losing somebody to combat that I knew. And I see Tom's wife and his 3 daughters on Facebook. I see his daughters going to prom. I see his daughters graduating high school. And I know that Tom can't be there for that. And that motivates me to be a better person for my family, to try to be there for my family and be available to my family. Do I always succeed at that? No, definitely not. But I try. And he motivates me to do that, to kind of carry on the torch that he can't carry anymore. Next is Adam. If I can be half of the EOD technician, half of the leader, half of the mentor that Adam was to me, then the people that work for me will be pretty lucky. Again, do I succeed at that? No. But he motivates me to try. Mikey Burris. Mikey's Bulldogs beat my Yellow Jackets that year and the year after that, but not this year. This year we're going to wear out UGA pretty bad. I feel it, and it's coming. And to console Mikey for that, while I'm on my way to Arizona, I got to swing through Georgia and get my things that are in storage. I'm going to go down to his cemetery. And first and foremost, I'm going to tell him just how bad UGA still sucks. And then after that, I'm going to tell him how he still motivates me to try to be a better person. And I'm going to tell him just how cute his little daughter's growing up to be. These are the guys that push me to be who I am. Next, guys I didn't mention, that's my buddy Mark without the helmet. Mark is a Marine EOD technician. We were in class together in EOD school. About 1.5 years ago, Mark lost both legs above the knee in Afghanistan. I don't know if you guys know much about amputations, but above the knee is significantly worse than below the knee. Just within the past couple weeks, Mark climbed to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. You can see him there while he was training for that. If Mark can do that type of thing with crappy little poles for legs, then what kind of person would I be to sit here on Incirlik and just barely scrape by and settle for just barely passing a PT test? I can't do that knowing that he's out there doing this type of thing. Second, my buddy Ben. He was also with me in EOD school. While I was gathering the information for this Storytellers event, Ben lost both of his legs in Afghanistan just a couple weeks ago. One above the knee, one below the knee. Ben just got back to the States, and he is at the beginning of a very long road to recovery that I'm sure probably seems hopeless. But if Ben's staring down that type of adversity, who am I to sit here and complain about having to stay over for 30 minutes and actually do my job to the best of my ability or try to help somebody out. That's not going to happen. So the EUD Memorial is down at Florida at our EUD school, and all our students walk past this every day. The names of the guys and girls that have been killed doing our job are on this wall. And my in-laws still live in the area, so I get to go visit it pretty often. And every time I go there, I'm reminded that every person on that wall gave everything they had and then some to do the job that we all love to do. And I go there and I'm reminded that mediocrity wasn't an option for those guys. And I kind of remind myself to make sure that it's not an option for me in my day-to-day. Am I always successful? No, but I do always try. So that's my story. That's the story of my friends. I hope that you guys can take something out of it, but this is what pushes me and motivates me. Thanks for listening.